Okay, what's good, y'all? It's the Facts on Cap Podcast here. I'm your host, Harsh Ricard, and wait, I have to. Okay, okay, yeah. So I had to do this. I just paused real quick. So this is finally an NFL video I've been claiming to do. I've been saying this for such a long time. I'm gonna do an NFL video. I should do NFL content, and I've done only one NFL video for like the past like 3 months, and I think the last time I made it was grading all the draft picks that happened in the first round. I think that was my last football. I think that was my last NFL content I made. So I'm trying to get back into it because football's happening this week. There's just a Hall of Fame game, but it's coming back. It's coming back. I'm starting to join fantasy leagues. It's good. It's all good. Football's back. The world is safe. Like that's just what it is. I know that was kind of cringy, but just leave it. Just football is such an amazing sport. I can't wait for this season. And today, what I'm actually gonna do is not probably. What I'm gonna do is go through each and every division and give my rankings. Like, who do I think will win the division? Who I think got worse? Who I think got better? Who I think who I think will be a surprise? What will be a surprise? What will not be a surprise? Who do I think is gonna make the playoffs? And this is just right before everything starts. So all the free agency moves are done. All the draft is done. Everything, like training camp is happening. You'll see if based on. So I think this is the perfect time to give rankings. So starting off, I'm gonna start off with the NFC first. So with the first division, I'm gonna rank is the NFC East. This division last year was the worst division of all. A 7-9 team made the playoffs. A team only won 7 wins and made the playoffs. That just shows how horrible it was. So for this year, last year Washington was able to win the division, and this year I would have the Cowboys winning the division. I don't like the Cowboys. No one likes the Cowboys. Unless you're a Cowboys fan, but if you're a Cowboys fan, I don't know. I don't know how you live with that. But every year the Cowboys always say, "This is our year. This is our year." Kind of like the basketball New York Knicks. I'm not the football New York Knicks. Actually, New York Boston Celtics. Well, I'll figure out a different one like that. But however, they tend to disappoint. As it's funny, but this year I do think they can actually win the division. As then again, this division isn't really that great. It's not really it's not really a good division, but it's not really a good division. And it's more of a bad division, yeah. But I do think the Dallas Cowboys will have a winning record going into the season. I mean, go. Oh man, the Dallas Cowboys will have a winning season this season, and they'll take the division. And I think their record will probably be around like 10-7. They're a 10-win team. And the reason why is just because of their offense. Unless no injuries happen like last year, their offense will be so efficient. The offense will probably be like a top 3 offense, to be completely honest. They have Dak Prescott at their quarterback, 2 great receivers in Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, a good deep threat in Michael Gallup. Their tight end situation is not really great, yeah, but their healthy elite offensive line is back. So yeah, Dak will have a pretty good time. The only thing stopping this team is their defense, because their defense is probably like a bottom 5 defense. But however, I do think it will be enough to make them win the division, as well as their coach, Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy is just flat out terrible. If you watch basketball, he's like the football Doc Rivers. Like, he always tends to have a talented teams, but he always fails. But the fact is, their defense will easily cost them some games. Even if they're on like an offensive shootout, their defense will easily make them lose games. That's why I have them going like 10-7. So with that being said, the team under them that will probably be like an 8-9 win team. And by the way, yeah, I didn't mention there's 17 games now. So you probably have known that. So that's why it's probably it just seems odd to not say 10-6 or like 9-7. Like it's just odd to not say that. So the next team I have behind them that will go 9-8 are the New York Giants. And the reason why I really put the Giants above the Washington football team is the fact that what the New York Giants really have a complete offense apart from their offensive line. They don't have a good quarterback in Daniel Jones, but they have such great weapons as they brought Kenny Galladay, they have Sterling Shepard, they have who's the Golden was it Golden Tate? No, Darius Slayton. Yeah, Darius Slayton. Golden Tate wants to, yeah. And they also have Saquon coming back. So this offense seems to be a pretty good offense. Apart from they have Joe Judge as their as their head coach. And Joe Judge is a really great coach or a great offensive minded coach. So he can do a good job. He can do a good job with his offense to hide its weaknesses. And their defense was a top 10 last year. And I think it probably can stay the same as although they didn't really add much. They added Azeez Ojulari from the draft, and I think they added another corner. I think they added another corner. I think his name was they added another, but they still have James Bradbury. They still have that guy. I forgot, man. I don't know a lot about the Giants, but I said Azeez Ojulari. They also have the guy named Dory Jackson, which is pretty good quarter number 2, yeah. And I also forgot they brought in Kadarius Toney. Like Kadarius Toney was uh a really great receiver out of Florida State. He was really great after the catch. And I do think he'll probably be in a lot of those. He'll probably be played in the slot a lot as he can easily get opportunities to create after the catch. And that's really what I think about the New York Giants. As for the Washington football team, I have them and the Giants going at the same record as 9-8. Actually, not 9-8. I have the football team going as 7-10. And the reason why is their defense last year will probably not be the same again. As last year they had a top 5 defense. I don't think they'll keep up that pace as defense is really hard to keep. It's really hard to be a top 10, consistently be at the top for defense compared to offense. And defensive regression really happens a lot. And they didn't really do much on offense apart from getting Curtis Samuel, and Terry McLaurin is still there too. But Ryan Fitzpatrick is their quarterback. I don't know how well he will do, but I don't know how bad. I don't know how terrible. I don't know if he's going to be terrible because that offensive line is not really very great. Although he did have the similar situation to the Dolphins last year, because they had a really good defense that basically carried them actually. That carried them, and they didn't really have a great offensive line. So maybe they can be the 9-8 win team. But I have them on the same pace as the Giants. So I think they're like a 7-9 win team, especially in this division. Like maybe they'll probably take, yeah, so 9-8, 7-10. I really think both of these teams, New York Giants and Washington football team, I think they're at the same record. Yeah. And for the last division, the Philadelphia Eagles. Not much to say about that. They don't really have a lot of great players, as like they did bring in Devontae Smith, which was the Heisman winner, so it's not bad. But they're like probably the worst situation they're probably like the worst situation any team can ask for. As I have them probably winning like 2 games, 2 to 3 games. 2 to 3 games, yeah. That's probably how I have them. So I don't know how the Eagles will play this year, as like it just seems that's a dumpster fire down there. And that's the NFC East for me. So I have the Cowboys winning that division. And for the NFC North, I'm going to start going there. The fact that Aaron Rodgers is back, Green Bay is easily going to be top of that division. It's just I have them probably going 12-5, maybe 11-6 to be completely honest, because they didn't really add much to the roster. They basically stayed the same, but they also got worse in a way. Like Corey Linsley's gone. They brought back Aaron Jones. I don't know why they did. Their defense, they didn't really add too much to it. They brought in Eric Stokes, who is a decent prospect, but he's not going to take them over the hump. He's probably more of a depth piece, but I don't see the Green Bay Packers being all that great compared to last year. They're probably going to have last year they had like the best offense in the league. They had the number one most efficient offense, and they had the top rated offense. But I don't think that's going to happen this year, as plenty of other teams got better offensively. So their offense will easily carry them to like win games, but I have them like as a 11 to 12 win team. It's pretty fair that. And whoever second in that division is kind of a shock, but the Vikings. Actually, I don't know. That's not a shock. That's not a shocker. The Vikings did a great job in the offseason. All they did was bring in, fill in needs. All they did was fill in their needs and upgraded at their positions, because now their defense last year, Daniil Hunter was gone. Their corners were basically rookies. So then now they're also a year older, so they have to gain more experience. Their defensive line, so I think Anthony Barr was gone. I believe Eric Hendricks was also not very effective because he was playing with injuries last year. And also Harrison Smith was playing with injuries too. So last year their entire defense was basically injured. And I do think with all those guys back, plus adding Patrick Peterson alongside they also added they also improved their offensive line with adding Christian Darrisaw, and their offensive line from last year was not very great, but adding in Christian Darrisaw, who was also a really great prospect coming out of the draft, maybe it will help them a lot more. And Kirk Cousins, and now they have a pretty good receiving core with Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. They got Irv Smith Jr. They did lose Kyle Rudolph, but he was more of a luxury for them. So I do think their offense can be like a borderline top 10, and their defense could be also a borderline top 10. So that would probably be enough to possibly maybe like a 9 to 10 win team. They can easily be like they can probably win double digit games. It's very possible. As it's not really that much of a debate to have the Lions last in the division with Chicago ahead of them. Chicago, they probably might stay the same. Last year they went 8-8. And this year, with an extra game, they probably go like 6 to 11. Then the matter is like Justin Fields is probably not going to start right away. The receiving core is, apart from Allen Robinson, who gets hurt a lot, is not very great. It's not very great. Their offensive line got better, but it doesn't really matter that much, just for the fact that last year their schedule got easier, and then the offensive line started progressing more. But at the same time, the schedule got easier. So and Nagy's play calling got way better, and they did upgrade at quarterback, but it's just they don't really have a great receiving core. They have a good defense. However, apart from their front seven, their secondary, apart from Jalen Johnson, who was a pretty great corner last year as a rookie. Jalen Johnson, as you heard that name from basketball, but this is a football. Jalen Johnson, the cornerback for the Bears. He doesn't seem like a great cornerback number one. As if you're going to make him block your number one wide receiver, he's probably not going to do great of a job. As he was great when Kyle Fuller was taking all that pressure, but Kyle Fuller's now gone. Eddie Jackson hasn't been great since 2018, or he hasn't been as great since 2018. Our secondary is very questionable, and I do think they won't make the playoffs this year as they made last year. So, and then the Lions, they won 5 games last year. I think they'll probably win 5 games again, but the Lions did a pretty great job in the offseason. They brought in Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and who did else did they bring? I was talking about this a few days ago. But and they also brought in Dan Campbell as their head coach. And Dan Campbell, although last year Matt Patricia was probably like the worst coach in history, but he wasn't complete. But Dan Campbell is a way better, is a way better option right there. Dan Campbell is probably there to just set the culture, help players gather around, have great chemistry. It seems like the Lions are heading in the right directions. I know it's really hard to say, but it seems like the Lions are heading in the right direction. So I have the Packers winning the NFC North. It wasn't really too much of a competition, but I do think the Vikings could battle it out with the Packers. I think the Vikings have a pretty good shot. And the NFC South, they are next. And the Buccaneers, they just won the Super Bowl. They brought back Shaq Barrett. They brought back Devin White. They brought back Levante David. Or not, they brought back Devin White. They brought back Chris Godwin. Yeah. Chris Godwin. And yeah, they're probably going to make another Super Bowl run. So I probably have them winning 12 to 14 games. They're going to be a great team. They're just going to be a great team again. I don't think anyone else is going to battle it out for their division. I don't think anyone else is not going to battle it out for their division. But however, like apart from the Bucs, it is a pretty competitive race as the New Orleans Saints, Carolina Panthers, Atlanta Falcons. I think all of them have the potential to be a 8 to 9 win team. I just think I think that can be the case here. As I don't think all of them will, but I do think I think this can be a really great competitive division as someone can fight for a playoff spot after the Buccaneers, yes. However, the team that I do think that can be second right behind the New Orleans and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is the New Orleans Saints. As the New Orleans Saints, I've seen a lot of predictions for them getting like only 4 wins, and that's kind of absurd to me because like they do have Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, and they have a pretty good offensive line. I know Michael Thomas is out for a few weeks into the season, but you still have Alvin Kamara. You still have a decent defense going through. And Jameis Winston is not that bad of a quarterback as he really isn't afraid to make big decisions. He is better. I think he would get better as a decision maker. And I think he did get LASIK eye surgery. So I think that would at least help his turnover issue. However, like I do think Jameis Winston is like a top 20 quarterback, and he can probably have a top 20 quarterback season. But I do have the Saints as a 9-8 win team. I do think because they have great skill players, and even outside of Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara, they still have Latavius Murray. They still have Armstead. They also have the one of my fantasy sleepers. I don't know why I'm forgetting names right now. It's because it's like 3 a.m. And Jawan Johnson, and they brought in Peyton Turner from the draft. I remember that. And Peyton Turner is a really great edge rusher. I was really high on him. Deontay Harris is a pretty great too as a returner. They still have great skill players. They still have a good defense. They still have a great team around. And I think Jameis Winston can at least make a winning record out of this team. And then the Carolina Panthers and Atlanta Falcons. This might be a hot take, but I think the Atlanta Falcons edged the Carolina Panthers. As I'm not trying to sleep on Carolina. It's just I don't really trust Sam Darnold to have a really big season as he doesn't really have a great offensive line. He does have a pretty good defense, which isn't too bad. However, their offense, I don't know if Sam Darnold will be as much effective. DJ Moore is a pretty great receiver, but apart from him, I don't really see the Panthers. Oh yeah, and also Christian McCaffrey too. I forgot about Christian McCaffrey. But Christian McCaffrey, apart from those guys, I don't know if they have anyone else. As the Saints had a lot more depth, but Carolina does not. So I probably have them as like a 5 to 6 win team. but they're probably going to be last in the division. As I have the Falcons being like a 7-10 team, as they are a pretty great team. They are a pretty great offensive team, as they have Matt Ryan as quarterback. Arthur Smith is in at their head as their head coach. I think Atlanta can surprise a lot of people, as they have great they have a great receiving core, and Calvin Ridley and Kyle Pitts. They brought in Kyle Pitts, who was pretty great. Offensive line is pretty great too. And their defense is not very great because they blow a lot of leads. But I do think sometimes at some games their offense will be the factor for them winning games. I don't know why I said will twice. I just said it for the dramatic effect for no reason. But moving on to the hardest, the most competitive division of them all, the NFC West. So last year, the NFC West had Russell Wilson and the Seahawks going 12-4. And the Seahawks got a lot worse. The Seahawks also, the other teams also got better. Actually, no. I think the Seahawks are the same. No, never mind. The Seahawks kind of stayed the same. Just the other teams got better. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And to start it off, the Los Angeles Rams, they added Matthew Stafford. I think that's really all they needed. They did lose key pieces in free agency like Troy Hill and John Johnson, but the fact their defense can probably still stay at the top. Stay at the top. I know I said it was harder to be at the top and consistently be at the top for defense, but the fact that the Rams have Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, and still a pretty great depth at their secondary, and I think they still have Flowers. They still kept Flowers. The fact that they still have the two best defensive players in the world, Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, that's probably enough to be a top 10 defense. That's just what it is. And I think they can be a top 5 defense because the defense has been really great, even for the past like 3 years. It's been really great. And Matthew Stafford having a great offensive line, great weapons, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee, they are set. All they needed was an upgrade at quarterback, and they upgraded. And they have a quarterback with great arm talent. And Sean McVay is, honestly, to me, he's like the best coach behind Andy Reid and Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick's first, of course, but Sean McVay is probably the best coach after Bill Belichick and Andy Reid. So, and he brought Jared Goff to the Super Bowl. I believe the Rams could be a Super Bowl team with Matthew Stafford, and especially with Sean McVay dealing with the talent of Matthew Stafford. This Rams are going to be dangerous. I have them as a 12-win team. The fact that I have them as a 12-5 team is because this division is very tough. They can possibly lose some games. And this might come as a shocker, but the Arizona Cardinals, I have them as a 10-win team. I have them as a 10-11 win team. I do think they can make the playoffs this year. I know I said this last year too, but the fact that Kyler Murray got injured, it kind of ruined their chances. But this year, I like what they did. As this year, they brought in Ronnie Stanley, they brought in James Conner, they drafted, I believe, Xavier Collins. They did lose Patrick Peterson, and I think if they push for Xavier Howard, I think my prediction will be true. But even without Xavier Howard, I think they could be good enough to win 9 to 10 games. I know I said 10 to 11. I think that's probably more likely if Xavier Howard goes, but I'm going to say 9 and 10. And the reason why I have them in 9 and 10, because as they brought in Rodney Hudson and they brought in James Conner. And what I really like about that is the fact that Arizona has a four wide receiver spread out, as they don't really use a lot of tight ends, as they do have, or that is also because they do have the worst tight end core in the league. But with Cliff Kingsbury, probably the worst coach in the league right now, his modern day offense, it still could work as the fact that they run with 4 wide receivers. They brought in Rondell Moore, who wasn't really great as a draft prospect, in my opinion, but the Arizona Cardinals needed guys after they needed receivers that are great with the ball in their hands. And Rondell Moore can be a pretty great at that role if he's used right there. So you have a good wide receiver core. You have a decent wide receiver core in DeAndre Hopkins, Rondell Moore. They brought in AJ Green. I really like that because the fact they like to throw, because Kyler Murray does have a great deep ball and AJ Green is a pretty good deep threat, so he can probably hit him right there. And also the James Conner. Since I talked about their 4-man spread, coordinators will probably put uh their secondary and some of their linebackers at their at the wide receivers, and then James Conner. Since everything is so spread out, they like to power run. They like to run with power. And the fact that Xavier Howard, James Conner can break tackles at times, and the fact that he can break tackles at times, he'll probably go against smaller guys because of how widespread their offense is. And since the offense is widespread, Kyler Murray might have in my opinion, he's a dark horse MVP candidate. Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray will probably have like a top 5 quarterback year again. Who knows? Or at the first half of last season. So you have that. And then I think they're set to win 9 to 10 games. Who knows? But this division is very tough, so it is very possible that doesn't happen. As the next team, I have the Seattle Seahawks, and I have them going 9-8. And it is really tough because last year they did win 12 games. However, it came to the fact that really they didn't really change as much. Like all they did was bring in Gerald Everett, but that doesn't help their defense. And their passing attack was already like a top 5 one anyways. So it's not going to be as effective as we think it is. But that's just what I think it is. That's just what I think it is. And the reason why I have the Seahawks over the 49ers is that the 49ers are not that really great of a team anymore. Or like they're not the 2019 team a lot of people are expecting them to be. As the Seahawks, Russell, they still have Russell Wilson. That's enough to win a lot of games, but they didn't really improve much, but they didn't really decline, they didn't really lose a ton of pieces. But I think if you really kept the same team going forward, I think you'd get a little worse. I think you'll get a little worse, especially in this tough division. I think you'll get a little worse. I think the Seahawks will probably be like a 9-win team. And the 49ers, I'd probably say, are probably just 6-7 win team again. The reason why is that I don't really see their offense, but since their offense is led by Kyle Shanahan, it's probably going to be a good offense. However, their defense is not the same as it used to be. As in their 2019 defense, since Jimmy Garoppolo might start, they still have the worst quarterback in the division. And even if Trey Lance starts, I don't know if he'll be better than Matthew Stafford, Kyler Murray, and Russell Wilson in his rookie season. I just don't see that. And even if he starts week 1, starts week 3, I still don't see it. And the fact that since their offense will probably be great, their defense is not as it used to be. As in 2019, Robert Saleh, who led that defense, is now gone. DeForest Buckner, who led that defense, is now gone. Richard Sherman, who played like a top 3 corner, he is gone. And they still have Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. They have Jason Verrett. Yeah, they still have great pieces, but it's not the 2019 defense that led them to a Super Bowl. I also forgot they do have good receivers, but I don't think, because of this tough division, I don't see them passing like 5 to 6 wins. I could be wrong because the 49ers proved me wrong in 2019, so they could prove me wrong again. Kyle Shanahan's a good coach. As now, that was all for the NFC. Now I'll go to the AFC. The AFC, probably the most competitive, probably way more competitive than the NFC. Because last year, a team in the AFC won 10 games and didn't make the playoffs. And that was the Dolphins. And that is just sad. Yeah. As an 8-8 team in the NFC made the playoffs. So I don't see that happening this year, but we'll see. We'll just start. We'll just start with this. And I don't know where to start, but I'll start with the AFC South. And it's tough to say this, but I'm a Colts fan, and I don't see the Colts being. Yeah, it's really tough to say this, but it's the Titans are winning the division again, but the Colts will not win will have a losing record. But I'll start with the Titans first. As the Titans, as we all know, got Julio Jones. Holy man, I ate too much. So the Titans got Julio Jones, and Julio is an amazing player. And I know the Titans, you can say, oh, their defense is trash. But however, their defense probably won't be as bad as last year. They brought in Caleb Farley, they brought in Bud Dupree and Nico Autry. That's not enough, I would say. Like, that's not enough to say, oh, this is a good defense. But it would be better than last year. And even last year, they didn't really play. They weren't really that great. And now, last year, their secondary, was not really that great. And that was because of the fact that they just played rookies. And I think now the rookies are probably be like 1 year older. So they'll probably understand the game more, and that would probably improve their defense. And the fact that they also lost Jonnu Smith and Corey Davis, Corey Davis was one of the best wide receiver twos last year. And last year, Jonnu Smith was also one of the greatest tight ends. However, they do have a backup. I think his name is Cole. They do have a backup who was also who almost put up the same production as Jonnu Smith last year. However, he is a way cheaper option. And last year they didn't have Taylor Lewan as their tackle, so their offensive line will probably be better. And Miller Forrest-Hall, Miller Forrest-Hall. But and then we all know, since they got Julio Jones, they have the best wide receiving core in the league. That's just what it is. They have the best wide receiver duo, or not what best wide receiver core in the league, but best wide receiver duo in Julio Jones and AJ Brown. Both of them are top 5. Both of them are like top 10 receivers, not top 5. That's Julio, but AJ Brown can possibly be one when he's older. And then they also have Josh Reynolds as their wide receiver 3. That's a pretty good wide receiver 3. And they have Ryan Tannehill at quarterback. Ryan Tannehill is probably the most efficient quarterback in the league. So they have him. Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry. So the rushing game is possibly going to be good. And last year, I know Arthur Smith is gone, but Arthur Smith was the biggest reason why Ryan Tannehill revived his career. But having Julio Jones, AJ Brown, and Derrick Henry as your skill position players, and Josh Reynolds as your wide receiver 3, this offensive coordinator has probably the easiest job. He can design great plays, and Mike Vrabel is a pretty great coach. So that's just, and so that the tendency is probably going to be like a 11 to 12 win team. They're going to cruise this division. I have a hot take. This division, the AFC South might be the worst division in the year. I have a feeling it will be. And the team I have right behind them is the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the Jacksonville Jaguars have a pretty great young team. They got Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. They got DJ Shark, Laviska Shenault, and they brought in Travis Etienne. They still have James Robinson, but he's probably not going to be as effective anymore because the Etienne will probably be there most of the time. However, they also brought in Marvin Jones, pretty underrated receiver. And they have a good offensive line, great interior presence, but their tackles suck. And they have an okay defense, just Last year they were like the worst, but they did bring in Javon Holland, or was it Javon Holland? Oh, they did bring in. Oh, they still have C.J. Henderson, who was pretty great. They're the only thing that's really kind of. They did bring Shaquille Griffin. Shaquille Griffin. Tyson Campbell was a really great prospect. Tyson Campbell was also a pretty great prospect, and Andre Cisco. Andre Cisco honestly might be a really great sleeper in the draft. I don't I don't know if he'll probably make an immediate impact, but this is a pretty great team. And Trevor Lawrence walked into a pretty an okay situation, especially as a number one overall pick. And I do have them as like an 8-win team, 7 to 8 win team. And the reason why is just Urban Meyer. I don't know if he can be a great NFL coach. College coaches don't tend to do good in the NFL. It just shows. It just shows that. I don't know how great Urban Meyer will do, but I think Jacksonville, because Trevor Lawrence is probably the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck, Peyton Manning, and John Elway. Uh, so you have that right there. And the next team after that is the Indianapolis Colts. My Indianapolis Colts. Carson Wentz is gone for like the first, but he's probably gone for like the first few weeks. Quentin Nelson's also gone for like the first few weeks. That's basically it. And they do have a good defense, but their defense last year was like a borderline top 10. And this year is probably not going to stay the same. Because although like they did bring in Kwity Paye, Deo Dingbo, they still have Eric Fish. They still have a pretty good team around them. But now Quentin Nelson's gone, Carson Wentz is gone, so they're gonna have to rely on a new quarterback. This is just one of the worst situations. Even as a Colts fan, I'd be like, "Cut, man, this is really unfortunate." And their defense last year, yeah, was a borderline top 10. But last year was kind of more of a, I'm not gonna say a fraudulent, but it was a lot more due to the fact that they really they really weren't that great because they weren't great against the pass and they weren't great against the run. Because what they did is that in the beginning of the season, when their defense was really great from like week 1 to week 10, they just had a basic defensive plan. They had a basic defensive strategy. And teams were dealing with COVID-19. So a lot of the times that their new additions didn't fit well. Their coordination was all over the place. So they didn't really have an answer for the basic Colts defensive strategy, the scheme. Yeah, that's a much better word. But then later on, the Colts got worse at the pass. The Colts got worse against the pass. They also got worse against the run. And their quarterback situation is bad. Their wide receiving core is not really that great. Their offensive line is good, but Quentin Nelson's gone, so that anchor is probably leaving. So that's probably eliminates them from being a top 5 line. Yeah, so I have them going like 6-11. Yeah, I have them probably going 6-11. The only reason why I'm giving the edge to the Colts to win 6 more games is because they have a really great run attack. They have a great rushing game, so that can probably lead them to some victories. Also, they're also probably playing the worst division of the year. So, like apart from Tennessee, this division is terrible. And the Texans, I honestly see them 0-17 because their quarterback situation, Deshaun Watson's not even going to play. They don't really have a great offensive line. They don't have a great team. I'm not going to go deep into that. The Texans are probably the worst team in the league. And here is the AFC East. I'll just move on to that. So all I'm going to say is that the Buffalo Bills will win the division easily. They'll probably stay at like their 12 to 13 win team again. And then the reason why is just that you still have Josh Allen, you still have Stephon Diggs. You brought in pass rushing Gregory Rousseau, but I don't know if that's Mike Milano is coming back, so that will help you instantly. how and so I just think, yeah, you probably will have, you probably might not be as good as last year, but you'll probably be such a great team. And they don't really have a great rushing game, so that might stop them from winning a few games here and there. But this is probably a good. They're easily going to win this division because I don't see the Dolphins or Patriots beating out. As speaking of those teams, the Dolphins. Oh yeah, I forgot about the Bills. They brought up Emmanuel Sanders, who's a pretty great wide receiver 3. It was also with Gabe Davis as a wide receiver 4. So really, this was really great. It's really great for them. And Cole Beasley at number 2 is pretty solid as wide receiver number 2. So the Dolphins and Patriots, I do think are like neck and neck with each other. I do think they both can possibly be double digit win teams. However, I'm gonna give the edge. This is really tough to say. No, I would give the edge to the New England Patriots. Although Cam Newton is not really that great, however, the New England Patriots just reloaded the roster. They have they have a decent wide receiving core, a good wide receiving core, a good offensive line, a good defense. Because Bill Belichick Bill Belichick led defenses will be good defenses. That's not like a hot take. Also, like what else? And also, yeah, they do have back Jones, but I see Cam Newton kind of having a rebounding year because he's not going to be as bad as last year. But I do think they can possibly be like a 9-8 win team. They can probably fight for a playoff spot too, even be like a double-digit win team. But the reason why I have the Dolphins up under the Patriots is just for the fact that I don't see the Tua last year was okay. He might be a lot better this year, but last year the Dolphins defense had Xavier Howard is probably gone. Even if they're bringing in Chandler Jones, I don't see that. I don't see Chandler Jones being effective. They did bring in Jalen Phillips, which was pretty great, but the only thing I feel confident about this team is just their receiving. It's just their skilled position players. Tight end, Mike Gesicki is probably a top 5 tight end. Who else? Oh no, they also have one other guy. Jalen Waddle, Devontae Parker, Will Fuller will be a pretty good wide receiving core to throw to for Tua. However, their offensive line is still kind of weak. Their running game is decent at best. And their defense last year will probably not be the same anymore because Xavier Howard is gone, and their front 7 it probably won't be as great as it was last year because all those guys had like career type years. Maybe they build on that, but I don't see it happening for the long run. And the New York Jets will easily be the final position and the final in this division. And I only have them winning like 3 games. I can see them. I can see them being a lot better just because they are building better than a lot of people are saying they are because Joe Douglas brought in Robert Saleh, their offensive line coach. I don't know his name. Their offensive line coach. He helped with the 49ers. He helped with the 49ers. And well, in 2019, that became one of the best offensive lines in the league. So, and I didn't really like Zach Wilson as a prospect, but even then, like this situation is not great for a rookie quarterback. So I don't see them exceeding 3 wins. I think 3 wins is like the best they can possibly get. And I'm gonna start with the AFC West. Next, I'm gonna go with the AFC West, and the AFC West have the Kansas City Chiefs. That's just automatically a 14-win team again. Like having Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Andy Reid coaching you, they upgraded on their O-line. They brought in Orlando Brown, Joe Thuney, and the what's his name? Kyle Long, yeah, Kyle Long with I don't know. The running game is not very great. Yeah, the running game is not really that great, but having the best quarterback in football, possibly the best receiver in football, possibly the best tight end in football, decent offensive line, above average offensive line, Andy Reid as your coach, your defense their defense is actually a lot better because Tyrann Matthew, L'Jarius Sneed. I believe they also brought in a few pieces. The Tyrann Matthew, L'Jarius Sneed. There was also one person. The only problem. Oh wait, let me. Oh, Mike Hughes is pretty decent. D Baker. I don't really know as much as about D Baker, but I will say that's an okay set. That's a pretty good secondary, probably average. And then their front seven is really just the worst part of this team. The front seven is just the worst part of this team. As like the only guy above average, I would say, is probably Chris Jones or maybe Frank Clark, but I don't see that. But I don't. But like with that offense, with an offense that good, I don't see them not being one of the best teams in the league. Like, and they're not in a they're not in a pretty bad they're not in a competitive division. That's what I'm saying. So yeah, 14-3. That's what the Chiefs are going to be. And the next line after them is going to be the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos will have a winning record. They will have a winning record. They'll go 9-8, and I think they can make the playoffs. I don't know if they'll be a lock to make the playoffs, but I think they can make the playoffs. I don't see a problem with the Denver Broncos. As apart from their quarterback, like what else is bad with them? Like they have a good rushing game, and Javonte Williams, a really great rookie coming out of I believe it was North Carolina. Yeah, it was North Carolina. And they also have Melvin Gordon. That's a pretty great rushing. That's a pretty great rushing duo. And then they have Quinn Meaners. And they also have that tackle, Bobby Massey. And it's not really that great, but it's not their offensive line is not really that great, but I think it can be great. It can be good enough. And they have a really great wide receiving core. Seth Williams, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Noah Fant. That's just a really great. That's just really good receiving core. But this is where this is why Denver, I think, can make the playoffs. And it's not that, and this is what I think can carry them to a winning record, is their defense. I think they have the best defense in the NFL. I pick their defense all the time for fantasy because I think every single fantasy I'm in, I pick their defense. Their defense is so great. They have the best secondary in the league. They have the most depth, too. And they also have a pretty great front seven. Their secondary consists of, it has Kyle Fuller coming off the bench with Patrick Surtain. They also have Justin Simmons, Jamar Johnson. That's a really great depth guy. Ronald Darby, Bradley Chubb coming off the edge. And they also have Von Miller coming back. They don't really need, and Bradley Chubb. I believe I said Bradley Chubb. Oh, yeah, I already said Bradley Chubb. But they also have Von Miller coming off the edge. And I also forgot one guy in that wide receiving core, and his name was Tim Patrick. Tim Patrick is a pretty great wide receiver, number 3. And Cameron Fleming, yeah, he was also a pretty great tackle. Oh, and Kareem Jackson, also a really great safety. They just have a really great defense. That's just what it is. They also have Bryce Callahan as their corner. That was the guy right next to Kyle Fuller. Yeah. With Callahan, Fuller, Simmons, Jamar Johnson, Patrick Surtain coming off the bench, and then the offensive line consists of Garrett Bowles, Quinn Meaners, Cameron Felling, Bobby Massey. I think this team they're just a quarterback away from just being an amazing team. That's just because the fact that the reason why I am so high on Denver this year, for the past 3 years, we've seen good defenses carry bad quarterbacks. This past year, Washington football team, led led a terrible quarterback situation into the playoffs. You don't like that example? 2018, Mitch Trubisky was in a playoff game with the 2018 Bears. In 2019, the 49ers made the Super Bowl alongside in 2018 also, or no, not 2018, 2020, Philip Rivers led Indianapolis Colts. That defense led that team to the playoffs. And in 2017, the best defense at that time, the Jacksonville Jaguars, led Blake Bortles into a playoff spot. And they won a playoff game too. This team, great defenses can carry great teams. As you want to hear that defense again, Bryce Callahan, Kyle Fuller, Justin Simmons, Kyle Fuller, Justin Simmons, Bryce Callahan, Patrick Surtain off the bench, Jamar Johnson, and then they also have coming off their edge, Bradley Chubb, Von Miller, Shelby Harris. They have a great defense. I know I've said this a lot of times, but I have Denver making the playoffs. I just believe that. I know Jerry Jeudy last year had a lot of drop issues, but with Courtland Sutton coming back, I think this is a pretty good wide receiving core. I'm not even a Denver Broncos fan, but I like Denver. This odds this year. As for the Chargers and Raiders, the Raiders, I think they're like a 4-win team. I don't really see, I just don't. Because last year they were just pretty mediocre, and they got worse. I think their defense improved a little bit, and their offense is probably the same. But I don't see them winning a lot of games. As like Derek Carr is good, Derek Waller honestly might be offensive player of the year. But they also really they have Henry Ruggs, yeah, but Nelson Aguilar, and they also have Hunter Renfro as their wide receiving core. But I don't see John Gruden is a pretty good offensive minded coach. But I don't see this team. I just don't see a bunch of mediocrity just being mediocre again. Last year they were pretty mediocre. This year I think they just regressed, especially with the Chargers getting better. But with the Chargers, I only have them winning like 7 games. It's just the fact that a lot of people are having high expectations for them, but I don't really see anything that's different. It's just I don't really see anything that's just the only thing they really improved was their offensive line, which is amazing, which is great. But Justin Herbert had basically a career year his rookie season, and it's hard when you have a really great rookie year where you're like offensive rookie of the year. It's hard to carry that on and be consistent with that. All the quarterbacks with the first year they played, they had regression. Dak Prescott had a really great rookie year. He regressed his second year. RG3 had a really great rookie year. He regressed his rookie year. Even Baker Mayfield had a great rookie year. He regressed his sophomore year. And Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, 2 top 5 quarterbacks, when their first year, the first year they started was their MVP year basically. But then the next year they regressed. This Justin Herbert, he regressed. He's probably going to regress. He has a high chance of sophomore slump. I think that's just how it is. I'm not saying he's going to be a bad quarterback. It's just he's going to have some regression. And that wide receiving core, apart from Keenan Allen, I don't really trust, because Keenan Allen is really injury prone too. So apart from Keenan Allen, you can't rely all your receiving abilities on you can't rely such a trash receiving core to just have one above average guy and then he's going to do everything. No, I don't think that's how great receiving cores work. And then their defense is solid, don't get me wrong. But the fact is, Joey Bosa is very injury prone, but he is really great. And Derwin James hasn't been healthy since his rookie year. Derwin James is really great, But if until I see those guys healthy, until those guys are healthy, until those guys play good, even when they're healthy, because injuries can ruin it. I just see an average defense. Even then, I don't know how great their defense will be. Even with Brandon Staley as their defensive coordinator, I don't know if he can do much. Even though because last year he had such great depth at every position, apart from like their front seven and the Rams defensive coordinator last year was the head coach this year. I don't see it. I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening again because he doesn't really have the talent as he did in Los Angeles. And no, in the Rams. And they're both Los Angeles teams. I forgot about that. So, just a disclaimer: I have Kansas City winning the AFC West. AFC East is the Buffalo Bills. AFC South is the Tennessee Titans, and the Packers are winning the NFC North. Not football team. Cowboys are winning the NFC East. Bucks are winning the South, and the Rams are winning the West. But the final division I'm going to talk about is the AFC North. This also could be a very great division to become great competitive division. So I'm going to start from the bottom. So the bottom of the barrel, the bottom of the AFC North will be the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow was hurt last year. I don't know if he'll be as much effective again because he got a torn ACL. They did improve in their offensive line. And really the only good thing about them is their skill players. Joe Mixon's good. Jamar Chase was pretty great coming out of college. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. They have a good skill position. But with Joe Burrow not being great at releasing the ball quick, and also he has like the worst timing. He likes to hold the ball for too long. And especially with that offensive line, which they did improve, but it wasn't a massive difference. He's probably not going to be as great. He's probably not going to have time to throw to Jamar Chase, Tyler Higgins, and T-Boy, or either one. But Jamar Chase coming out of college, he couldn't create consistent separation. If Joe Burrow doesn't see that, but although he does have the trust in him because they did play in LSU, it's also going to be hard because with these three teams they're facing in the division, they all can add great pressure. So it's going to be difficult. So I have them as like a 3-win team max. I think they'll probably be like a top 5 pick again. And above the Bengals, but not winning the division, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Last year they went 12-4, won 11-0, like straight, and then they just completely fell apart. The reason is that this year, I think because of Mike Tomlin just being a genius, I do think they can probably still have a winning record. But the fact is, I don't see them making the playoffs. Yeah, I don't see them making the playoffs. And also, their offense is probably going to be horrible next year. Although they did bring in Najee Harris, who probably will be offensive rookie of the year, they have a good receiving core, but the Big Ben situation, Big Ben isn't as great as he used to be, and he's not great this year. Their offensive line got weak. Villanueva was gone, but he wasn't really great. But their center was gone. They didn't really add too much in the draft. Their defense will probably be top tier. They did bring in Melvin Ingram. And I do think TJ Watt will probably have like a defensive player of the year season. However, and they still have a good secondary. Minka Fitzpatrick, Joe Hayden, not the linebacker they have. I believe his name is Pouncey. Yeah, they do. They do have a good defense last year, and they'll probably have one this year because Mike Tomlin is pretty good coach. But I don't see them winning. I only see them winning like 7. I probably have them like a 6 to 7 win team. They could have a winning record just because Mike Tomlin is Mike Tomlin, but I'm gonna have to see to believe it. So this is a tie. I actually have whoever wins the division, I have it as a tie. And the factor of this is I do think this team is better than the other just by if they were to play each other. And it'll probably be like a head-to-head matchup. But the reason why I have Baltimore over Cleveland, the Baltimore Ravens have a power run scheme that the Cleveland Browns will not be great against. The Cleveland Browns will probably be easily a Super Bowl contending team. They brought in John Johnson, Troy Hill. They still have Denzel Ward. They probably can push for Xavier Howard too. And they brought in Greg Newsome. They brought in Jadeveon Clowney. They didn't lose Sheldon Richardson, but Myles Garrett also might have a deep defensive player of the year season. Also getting Jadeveon Clowney and also getting Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. That's a really good defense right there, in my opinion. Like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was my favorite linebacker coming out of the draft. He was also the best linebacker coming out of the draft, in my eyes. What I thought. But not but and also he might be in defensive rookie of the year. However, I don't see them defeating the Ravens twice. Just I do have them winning one game, but I do think Ravens can beat them in a head-to-head, and that's why they'll probably both be like an 11 win team. They'll both be an 11 win team, but the Ravens will win in a head-to-head, and that's why they'll take over that division. And the reason why I have that is also because of their power run scheme. The Ravens have a really great rushing game. Lamar Jackson can run. J.K. Dobbins is good. Gus Edwards is good. And now they finally have receivers that Lamar can throw to. Sammy Watkins is pretty decent. They also brought in Rashad Bateman, one of my favorites coming out of college. I had him as a top 10 receiver coming out of the draft. And also they still have Mark Andrews. Their Greg Roman should be better as a play caller. And the only reason why I don't see they did bring, and oh yes, they also brought in Tylan Wallace. I forgot. Tylan Wallace is a pretty great receiver too. And Marquise Brown is a pretty good after the catch receiver. If they can use him more as a slot, or maybe a push using more in the push passes, then this is a really great rushing. They have a really great rushing game, and they also have a decent offensive line. They don't really have a great interior offensive line because when they had a good one, Lamar had his MVP season, but their defense, they still have a great secondary, and they still have Marlon Humphrey. I actually don't really know much about. Oh yeah, Brandon Stevens. Our Darius Washington coming out of the draft was pretty great. Jimmy Smith, and they also added Justin Houston free agency. They also added they let go of Yannick Ngakoue, but they brought back Chris Smith, and they still have Calais Campbell, Marcus Peters. I've heard Marcus Peters along that team, and they still have Patrick Queen. And they still have Ronnie Stanley as their tackle, and Justin Tucker is probably the most accurate kicker of all time. This is a really great team. They'll probably be the same team as last year, but this time Lamar has some receivers he can throw to at least. However, I do think the Browns have a higher chance to win the Super Bowl. Just the fact that it all really depends on Baker Mayfield. If Baker Mayfield has a top 10 quarterback season, I do think Baker Mayfield can not elevate this Browns team. I think this Browns team can make the Super Bowl, as they have a great offensive line, best offensive line in the league. They have a good receiving core. Odell's coming back. Maybe they should work out Odell and Baker at least. They have David Njoku, Jarvis Landry, Rashad Higgins, and Austin Hooper. They signed Nick Chubb to a contract, which was a pretty good contract because he really elevates the rushing game a lot. But they still have the great rushing game in football, apart from like the Ravens. But yeah, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt is easily like the best running back duo in the league. And yeah, that's really what I'm at. I'm the Baltimore winning AFC North. That's all I gotta say. And I actually don't know how long this is, but this is the All Facts podcast. I'm Horace Sakar. We're signing out. Yep, I'm out.